77-year-old Anna Mae Florence was in her apartment relaxing when she heard a knock at the door. She opened it. It was a young woman, nicely dressed, asking for money for a charity. Now, this was 1987, so things were a little bit different back then, so she invited the woman in to give her the money. That one act of kindness turned into an absolute nightmare. This is the case of Anna Mae Florence. June 26, 1987, Anna Mae was waiting for her sister Lily and her brother-in-law Alonzo to pick her up to go shopping. Once they arrived at the apartment, they could hear screaming from inside. But before they got to the door, it opened and a young woman covered in blood came running out. Alonzo grabbed her, but she was covered in blood, so she was slick, so she slipped away. Alonzo gave chase, but the young woman said, "If you follow me, I'll shoot you." So he broke off the pursuit and they went into the apartment. And there was Anna Mae lying on the floor. She had a cord around her neck. She had been stabbed and beaten. But she was still conscious. So of course they asked her, who was that? And she said she had no idea. And shortly thereafter, unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries and passed. The police canvassed the neighborhood, and there were a few witnesses who had seen a young woman going door to door asking for money. And the police interviewed and took fingerprints of any young women in the neighborhood who fit that description. When the police were collecting evidence in the apartment, they noticed a partial bloody fingerprint on one of the walls. They tried to match any of the fingerprints they had from the girls that they had interviewed, but they were unable to get a match. One day a man called anonymously, letting them know that he knew who the killer was. The police asked for his name, but he was reluctant. But they reassured him that he was a witness, not a suspect. He said his name was Odell. He provided his social security number and his date of birth. He said that the person responsible was named Danita Campbell. They had known each other from school. So the police obviously wanted to talk to him in person, and he did come in. They asked him if he would contact Danita and wear a wire. He said yes initially, and then changed his mind and disappeared. The police were obviously very keen to find Danita Campbell. The police conduct a manhunt for Danita, and eventually they track her down. She's in a car, they pull her over, and they print her right there on the spot. Unfortunately, the print on the wall is a partial print, and there was a lot of blood on it, so it was very difficult for them to say with any certainty that it was Danita's fingerprint. There are no more leads in the case, and it goes cold. In 2012, Detective Kathy Justice and Detective Ralph Taylor took over the Columbus Police Cold Case Unit and decided to give Anna Mae's file a completely fresh look. They went back to the evidence from 1987. In one of the crime scene photos, they noticed something unusual. There was a chair with a jar of mayonnaise on it, and that obviously seemed out of place. They went through the evidence boxes, and they found that jar of mayonnaise. In 1987, fingerprint techniques were usually paper and ink. But by 2011, forensic science had evolved. Detectives used a technique called superglue fuming, and they were able to retrieve a very good print. They ran fingerprints of the young women who were interviewed back in 1987, and none of them were a match. They played back some of Odell's recordings from back in 1987, and on second interview, he had mentioned that there was a purse with a welfare check in it, and that is something that they did not release to the public, so Odell obviously knew who did it. Danita Campbell's fingerprints did not match the fingerprint on the mayonnaise jar. Police tracked down Odell to have another interview with him. They played the tape, and he said that he did not know what they were talking about. He said that was not him, and he didn't know any Danita Campbell. The police, of course, did not believe him, but on the tape, he had given his address of Edinburgh, and he spelled it out, Edenburgh. And Odell told them, "I never would have spelt it that way," because Odell could not read or write. So the police had asked him, well, who's on the tape? Who has that information for you? They played the tape again over and over, and he said, that sounds like my cousin Chris. Chris would go with Odell when Odell would apply for jobs to help Odell fill out the forms. And of course, Chris had all of his information, social security number, etc. So now the police went to track down Chris. And at that time, he's living with his mother. So they had played the tape for him, and he said he had no idea what he's talking about. That wasn't him. So they played the tape for his mother. Obviously, his mother recognized his voice, and she said, enough time has passed. Let them know what they want to know. So Chris came clean. He said that the murderer was Zena Roberson. Zena had confessed to him what she had done, but he promised he wouldn't tell anyone. So that's why he covered it up for all this time. Zena had a shoplifting charge in Georgia, so they compared her fingerprint on file to the fingerprint on the mayonnaise jar, and it was a match. Now they had to find Zena. The police contacted the Georgia authorities, and the police there said that generally what happens in a situation like this, they will put out an ad in Facebook. So that's what they did. They didn't say what Zena had done, just if anyone knows her and knows where she is. Within an hour, they had numerous results. The police were able to track her down and arrest her. They initially charged her with aggravated murder, but she pleaded down to a lesser charge of murder, and she was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. It's amazing that this case was partially solved due to a Facebook post and a jar of mayonnaise. Please let me know your thoughts on this case, and if you found it interesting, please consider liking and subscribing for more. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.